Welcome back everyone to the next episode of Road to 100%. In the previous episode, I covered what it means to legitimately 100% Animal Crossing, my Billion Bells achievement, and my progress moving forward to collect every item in the game. If you haven't watched the first episode yet, I recommend doing so before watching this one. The link can be found in the description. In the previous episode, I mentioned I ran a fundraiser event for the weekend of March 6th to March 8th, 2020, to save real-life animals. A few days prior, around midnight on March 2nd, 2020, a tornado struck Nashville, Tennessee, sadly resulting in 25 lost lives and devastation to those communities. Among those affected were family pets and other animals who lost their homes. When I heard of this news, I found that a non-profit animal shelter, Paws Chicago, were working around the clock to save as many of these pets as they could. I contacted a representative there who told me they had rescued a couple dozen dogs and cats who had either become lost or had to be given up by their owners due to the devastating circumstances. Many of these animals needed medical treatment on top of the expenses for shelter, food, and water. I decided to do what I could to help these animals in need and run a fundraiser on my stream after obtaining 1 billion bells. If only I could exchange those bells for real money. Well, the next best thing I could do is run a fundraiser during this time. I contributed $100 from my own pocket, and all the money that people donated that weekend went straight to Paws Chicago to help save these animals. Immediately after obtaining 1 billion bells, I announced the fundraiser and got to work. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I had fun incentive goals such as designing patterns, writing letters, playing NES games, and more. Throughout the weekend, as I worked toward completing the museum, I would pause my fishing, bug catching, and fossil finding to thank donators with personalized in-game letters and custom patterns they chose for me to draw, all the while adding their name and amount donated to a running donation list I kept in the Animal Crossing journal. This was not only meaningful to engage the community and raise money, but also pretty fun. On top of these incentives, I also had milestone incentives for reaching a certain amount of money in donations, such as visiting my island and playing NES games. So we had a good weekend of raising money for an important cause while playing Animal Crossing. Most of my time spent between donation incentives was collecting fossils. In the first episode, I started to dig up the buried items around town. Not only was this to declutter the town, but it was also to prepare for digging up fossils each day. Since any item that's buried has the same star-shaped pattern, there would be no way to distinguish whether or not the buried item is a fossil or something else like a gyroid. By clearing my town of buried items, I could find fossils quickly later on. Each day up to 5 fossils are buried around town. And the reason it's up to 5 fossils is because one less fossil will be buried each day for each fossil already buried somewhere else in town. This is also the case even if you've dug up a fossil and reburied it elsewhere in the same day. In fact, I take advantage of this during my Billion Bell challenge by reburying the 5 fossils up into the top right corner of my town so they don't get in the way. Anyway, these fossils are unidentified and have to be mailed off to the Faraway Museum to become identified. In order for the Faraway Museum to become a mail recipient in the first place, you must first have an unidentified fossil in your player inventory upon starting a new day. Surplus fossils are held in a mailing backlog that can hold up to around 30 backlogged letters, where any letters beyond this max get deleted. Backlogged fossils will be mailed to you at the beginning of each day, like normal, 3 at a time. Keep in mind that other letters use the same backlogging system, including post office rewards, HRA rewards, and Nook raffle tickets. Anyway, the fossils that get mailed to you become identified and can be any one of 25 possible fossils. There's a 50-50 chance each fossil will be a creature fossil or a generic fossil. The 5 generic fossils include amber, ammonite, dinosaur egg, dinosaur track, and trilobite. The 20 creature fossils are part of the Apatosaurus, Mammoth, Plesiosaurus, Pteranodon, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, and T-Rex fossils. There are equal odds of receiving any one identified fossil within the respective fossil group. So that equates to a 1 in 10 chance that you'll receive a specific generic fossil and a 1 in 40 chance you'll receive a specific creature fossil. Theoretically, you could collect all 25 fossils in just a few days, but more than likely it'll take a couple of months of digging up unidentified fossils and mailing them off to the Faraway Museum. This can be a lengthy process. My strategy to find fossils efficiently is to look for 3 fossils per day, since that's the most you'll get back from the Faraway Museum each day. Otherwise, they'll get stored in the backlog. If I start getting a backlog, I'll keep track of when I have 3 backlogged fossils so I can skip looking for fossils on that day. Otherwise, each day I'll make a sweep around my town, taking mental note of where I found each fossil and how many I found. This can be useful if you're having difficulty finding a particular buried fossil, because new fossils will not be buried in an acre if there is already a fossil buried in that same acre. Furthermore, fossils, as well as other buried items such as gyroids and villager treasure hunt furniture items, will not be buried in the train station, house, lake, and wishing well acres. They also won't be buried in the 4x4 space in the dump. It's also important to note newly buried fossils follow some additional logic of where they can be buried in an acre. Other buried items do not follow this logic. Fossils cannot be buried directly behind the town map board at the police station or the town tune board at the post office acres. And most importantly, they cannot be buried 1 or 2 spaces directly behind a fully grown tree or any building. This makes finding fossils significantly easier than other buried items, since the star-shaped buried item pattern should be visible from at least one perspective while running around. The most difficult spots to find buried fossils are those behind the museum, since it's such a large building, and those along the town edges, since the camera gets locked and the number of unique perspectives is much lower along the town edges. Another situation that can cause a fossil to become difficult to find is when town changes occur, because fossils that have already been buried will not move locations. So if a new tree is planted, Nook upgrades his shop, or a new villager moves to town in such a way that a previously buried fossil no longer meets its original buried logic conditions, that fossil will be more hidden and thus more difficult to find. So if you're still having trouble finding a particular fossil, try to remember if one of these situations occurred. Also, remember to take note of where you're finding other buried fossils to rule out those acres and to narrow down which acre this difficult to find buried fossil may be located in. These are some useful strats I implemented to efficiently acquire fossils. I spent most of this weekend appraising fossils and completing donation incentives. Now, there is a trick you can do to speed up the process of acquiring all 25 fossils, which involves resetting. I purposefully didn't use this trick this time since I wanted to get all the fossils without resetting, but it is worth mentioning. The identified fossils you receive from the Faraway Museum are actually determined upon loading your town for the first time in a day. This means you can check which identified fossils you received for a day, and reset if you don't like them. When you load your town up again, these fossils will re-roll to something else, so you can keep resetting until you get the ones you want. Obviously, you'll have to deal with Resetti yelling at you about how resetting is bad, but it is a trick you can do to speed up the process of getting all 25 fossils. Again, I didn't implement this trick this time since I wanted to get all the fossils without resetting. By the end of the weekend, I successfully got all 25 fossils, completing the first section of the catalog. I also wrote a bunch of letters, hand-drew custom patterns, visited my island, and played NES games for donation incentives. We ended up raising over $800, which all went straight to Paws Chicago to help the animals affected by the Nashville Tornado Disaster. I want to sincerely thank everyone who participated and donated during this time. You're all amazing people, and the animals thank you. Here are some of the fun moments we had over this weekend. There you go, Cryptic Charlie, for you. Oh, they are a bit more orange than red. Yeah, there we go, there's our Groucho. What do you guys think? Did I do a good job? Just for you, Stella Cat. Thank you for the $10. That's for you, Zixlon. Thank you. The animals are going to be very grateful. So that means now we must help 3 more animals around town. This whole town played this Game Boy. What game do you think they're playing? Do you think they're playing Pokemon? Oh, thank you, Goldie. There we are. What do you guys think? Do you like it? There's Kiki. Alright, now this one is a little tricky. You want to twist your torso and then reach for the sky. Sort of like... For you, Woders. Thank you for your donation. Alright, there we are. There you go, that's for you. Thank you, Cryptic Charlie. Very cool. There it is. Beep. For you, Vacation Juice. Thank you. I think this might be my longest letter I've written so far. But it's worth it. Ooh, that's a little too much curve. Oh! We're in bounds! Let's go! That's fine. Wow. Alright, we're good. Birdie! And with that, everyone, we have completed 18 holes in NES Golf. That was a fun donation incentive. With a final score of 87. That's actually pretty good. Actually pretty good. Yep, early New Horizons gameplay footage. If I had a cabana table, my room would be like a room in a fairy tale. Oh, I feel my aura glowing just thinking about it. There we are, there's our Joan. Our immortalized Joan. 200 hours! Let's go. 200 hours, wow. That's crazy. Alright. Again, I want to sincerely thank everyone who participated and donated this weekend. Thank you. I later followed up with that same Pause Chicago representative and found out all the animals received medical treatment and were later adopted. This was really great news, and it really made me happy to hear that. In the next episode, I continue working towards collecting all the model items to create an epic model item house layout. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.